go.
Good morning. Good morning. Mark, we were born to be ready for this. Glad to hear it, Dan. Good morning to you. Good morning to Dan was first off the mark this morning, but also good morning to Jim Turner, to Gary Muir, to Ken Hatcher, who's got the weather, and good morning to my wife, who apparently is watching. I didn't know, but apparently she is tuned in. I don't know if everybody can tell. After yesterday's brief audio issues, I've tweaked a few settings in the background. Hopefully you can't just hear me, but you should hopefully be picking up just a little bit more bass in my voice. Anybody else getting that? Let me know if you can. I'm going to say good morning to Civil Tracker, who have just joined us, among many others actually, but joined us over on Instagram. Good morning to you guys. Now, the NFDC's CEO was recently quoted as saying mental health is as impactful on an individual's life as safety is on site. My first response was, well, that's a weird non sequitur. My second thought was, so why aren't you doing more to combat both? But it set me thinking about all of the contradictions that exist within the demolition and construction industry. Now, I might get around to writing something on this at some point, but I haven't yet. But while I was waiting for my father-in-law to finish his latest bout of dialysis yesterday afternoon, I made a few notes of just some of the contradictions that kind of populate the UK demolition and construction industry. I just thought something has come through on the chat. Yes, so contradictions in the UK construction and demolition industry. Here is but a taster. It is an industry with a leadership council, but it lacks leadership. It's an industry that tackles a skill shortage by making it more difficult and more expensive to stay within it. There are 300,000 construction SMEs. Between them, they employ 2.7 million people and are responsible for 9% of the UK's GDP. That's 117 billion quid per annum. Yet they are dictated to by a handful of main contractors that are allowed to set the industry agenda. Construction is generally the first industry into a recession, but is always expected to lead the nation back out again. The sector strives for efficiency while constantly adding burdensome bureaucracy. It speaks loudly about gender equality while operating sites that remain mindlessly misogynistic, has a lower than average level of illiteracy, yet requires workers to sit exams, read operator manuals, and to interact increasingly with text-based computer systems, has a skill shortage while trained and experienced operators are sat at home, favours classrooms and cards over actual competence, shouts about its mental health awareness, even when having a suicide rate that is almost 4 times the national average. And as if that wasn't enough, it has trade federations that actively exclude more of that trade than they claim to represent. Weird, right? Glad to hear that people are picking up all the the additional bass. You see, I do in real life. I actually sound a lot like Barry White, very manly. That's not true at all, but I'm glad you're picking up the additional bass. Now, on a similar subject to all of those contradictions, I've actually written a new column in this morning. Explains why I believe demolition and construction is a hard industry to love. Let me pop over here. If you're in our WhatsApp group, you've probably already seen the link to it. But if you haven't, you can see it using the link in the chat. Who have we got here? Yes. More bass in your voice. Sounds like you've been smoking 50 Capstan full strength. I haven't. Do you know I've never actually tried a cigarette? It's weird, right? Isn't it? Weird. Let's have a look. Jim Turner says, all good here, Mark Tarr. Wading through shite and trying to shape up a pond that hasn't stopped running with water since I started it. Not my choice, just putting someone else's fuck up right. Hey, listen, that's kind of my job. That's my full-time job. And the volume is much better today. Might have something to do with you cleaning the phone speaker. First time it's been out of its protective case in nearly 2 years. Yeah. I don't have a case on my phone, and just to prove it, I do not have a case on my phone, but my wife does, and inside, horrible. Jim Turner has just said, Barry, what you say, does that mean you're the walrus of demolition? Yes, it does. I am the walrus of demolition. If that turns out to be my epitaph, I'll be quite happy with that. Right, people, should we crack on? I think we probably should. We've been babbling on for 6.5 minutes already. So without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. Just going to say, see what this is all about. Good grief. I'm going to do this one first. Chris Ford says, don't mention water. I've got a well in the yard. The water level is normally 6 to 7 foot down. The other day, it was coming out the top. Had some rain, have we? And there's Dan Cullen saying, good morning to the Demolition Queen, Mrs. Anthony. I was talking about this recently. Obviously, I've spent my entire life being called Mark Anthony, which brings with it its own challenges. But my wife basically then became, everybody else. Oh, you must be Cleopatra then. And the first couple of times it was said, she chuckled politely, and from that point on, and we're almost 40 years together. From that point on, you could see murder in her eyes every time suggests that she is Cleopatra. Now, it is Wednesday. It is Wednesday. Happy Hump Day. Wednesday, the 27th of March. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. In today's show, these Danish dumpers dazzle, but I need you to decide whether they're hot or not. Avant Techno charges ahead with its battery technology. JCB offers greater precision with its excavators, with its new IntelliGrade product. We're making the case for a new wheel loader. Sure, you can see what I did there. Plus, Volvo shows off a rehandling specification L180H wheel loader. But before we get to all of that, we do have the small matter of today's mystery machine, which hopefully lasts a little bit longer than yesterday's mystery machine. I am just going to say my wife is going to be unbearable now. Apparently she's the demolition queen. I'm just fixing my crown, she says. Good God. Jim Turner, nothing wrong with being a walrus, Mark. They live a long time. They're always long in the tooth. Well played, Jim. Well played. Long in the tooth. Good one. Now, yes, I've said mystery machine. Should we have a look? See how eagle-eyed you all are? And I'm looking once again for make and specific model. If anybody's got any clues on that, please let me know in the chat. Not an easy one from a first one. It's a bucket. Doesn't tell you much, but if you've got any clues on that, we would love to hear from you. Now, while you're figuring that out, let me very quickly remind you of today's question of the day. Yeah, our question of today, or question of the day for today, is this: what fictional family would you most like to join? My first thought was The Simpsons, mainly because I've based my entire life and personality on Homer Simpson, and my body weight as well. But after a bit more thought, I'm going with The Sopranos. Now, I realise I'd have to tread very carefully, mind my P's and Q's, and try to avoid being whacked, as so many in The Sopranos were. But they do seem to have plenty of money. They eat well. Yeah, so for me, The Sopranos. What about you? What fictional family would you most like to be a part of? Let me know in the chat. We'll come back to that at the end of the show. Let's do some of this, shall we? Just to let you know, Jim Turner has guessed at our mystery machine, which looks like that. He is guessing it's a 245 XR. It is not. Is it a yellow Kobelco 145, says Dan Cullen? It is not that either. Let me give you a little bit more to be going on with. So you've now got an indistinguishable bucket and an indistinguishable set of tracks. And I can tell you, Ken Hatcher has gone with the Demolition 225. It is not one of those. And Gary Muirhead has gone with the Hyundai Robex 140-7. It is none of those things. None of those things. Now, if you were watching the show yesterday, you might recall that I gave a warm welcome to the fine Danish folks at HG Machines who were watching over on Instagram. The company actually produces some very smart-looking electric site dumpers, and they will have them on display at the Intermat show next month. I don't expect you to wait that long, though. In fact, I'm going to show you those machines right now. All you have to do is just one job. I need you to decide whether you believe these Danish dumpers from HG Machines are hot or if they're not. I know which way I'm going, but you decide. So, what are we saying, people? I'd like to get your thoughts on that. So, Mick Norton has just said, E2000, 25-hour charge period, no thanks. Gary Muirhead, meanwhile, says, is NC Dumper still manufactured in Ireland? I don't know the answer to that. Those are HG machines, obviously, and they are manufactured apparently in Denmark. I will be seeing them over in Paris for Intermat. Personally, now, I need to kind of preempt this a little bit. I took the latest JCB electric dumper for a spin while I was up at JCB last week. Mightily impressed. Yeah, mightily impressed. Acceleration like nobody's business, and as quiet as anything. I realise my application of machines is rather different to everybody else's, but I took it for a spin, and my son Fred was actually filming me, and I didn't have to engine for him to tell me what he needed me to do with it next. Absolutely spot on. So yeah, I'm very impressed with electric dumpers. Even more so impressed with the new HG machines. Let us know a bit more in the chat if you believe them to be hot or not. I'm inclined to put them forward for our grand championships in December, but if anybody's got any objections to that, please let me know. Now we need to go back to, bear with me, let me get rid of that. We need to go back to our mystery machine because we've had some more guesses. We've had Dan Cullen going for the JCB 140X. It is not. Dan has also gone for the JCB 86C-2. It is not that either. Mick, no, it's not that one. Dan has also gone for Hyundai HX210. It's none of those things. I can tell you he's not right. But our closest guess yet is Mark Whiting, who has suggested the Case 130E. It is not, but you're the closest yet. So let me give you a little bit more to be going on with. That doesn't tell you anything at all. Let me give you a bit more. There you are. That's what you've got to be working with. If anybody's got any guesses on that, I'd love to hear from you. And please keep the comments coming in on. There's Gary Muirhead saying the Case CX210. It is not the Case CX210. It is not that. It is not. keep those coming in. Wow, lots of people saying exactly the same thing. CX210E, CX210, CX210. You're all wrong, but at least you're consistent. I'll give you that. Right, shall we crack on? And please let me know, HE dumpers, hot or not? Let us know in the chat. Let's have this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Now, we were just speaking of all things electric, so let's carry on with that. Have you noticed how the focus on future fuels has allowed equipment manufacturers to diversify their product offerings? I have. You can now buy a Volvo electric charging station, for example. JCB will be offering a hydrogen delivery vehicle, and those fine Finnish folks at Avant, well, they're offering the very latest in battery technology to help keep you as green as their machines. Play.
Decades of experience with electric loaders, trying to find the perfect battery with little success. So we made them ourselves. The new OptiTemp batteries use globally unique battery cell immersion cooling technology. In the battery's submersible structure, all the cells are surrounded by a special liquid. The OptiTemp technology enables maximum safety and efficiency, giving you full capacity in both hot and very cold climates. The temperature control system switches on automatically when plugged into a charger. So you can start the workday with a battery temperature already optimized for hard work in any weather conditions. Avant Power is the new era for electric loaders with better capacity, working time, lifetime, safety, durability, and pricing. Avant OptiTemp. Work all day with one charge.
Work all day with one charge. Precisely what our friend Mick Norton was asking for from those dumpers. And there's Mick again, actually. I would have preferred a video of the E2000 up to its axles in mud with a full heap capacity load, not in the hermetically sealed environment displayed. Promotional videos. What are you going to do? You want your machines to look nice and shiny, but I do fully take your point. I can tell you we do actually have a winner on our mystery machine. I'll tell you that Gary Muirhead, Gary, between you and the right answer is but a fag paper, I promise you. But I can tell you that Jonathan Duras has got the right answer. There's Dan Cullen going very close as well. And again, lots and lots of guesses on that. But I can tell you the winner for today is Jonathan Duras. Morning, Jonathan. Haven't seen you for a while. I'm sure you've been lurking in the background. Turns out lots of people lurk in the background of this show. The number of people that I speak to that have been, they can tell you every word that I've ever uttered, but they never actually pop up and say things. If you are one of those, if you are a lurker, and you're welcome to be, please pop by and say hello. We'd love to have you amongst the gang. But I can tell you, Jonathan Duras has gone with the case CX300E, and that is precisely what our mystery machine is. And just to prove it, there you are, sat atop a mountain in a perfectly natural environment, almost certainly not photoshopped. Maybe, I don't know. But Jonathan Duras, well done. Congratulations. You win nothing apart from the admiration of all of your friends here at the Breakfast Show, but congratulations. Let me get rid of that. Gary Muirhead talking about the Avant Techno. This would be ideal for interchangeable battery packs. I totally agree. There's our friend Mick who's just joined us. Footy has sent us a message, but I'm not entirely sure I know what he's saying here. I don't want to... I'm not sure what the first little bit means, but he could have full-time job starting the other side of Devon, means getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and leaving here by 5 to get there. It'd be long days driving a rubber duck. Yeah, listen, what are you going to do? I think one of the things that the fuel crisis that we had, and obviously the fuel went up in price and has never really come back down again. I do think that's made people be a bit more aware of the distance they're traveling for work. Unless you're unless your mileage is being paid for or you've got a company van or something similar, you do need to look twice at where you're working, because you could end up working for nothing. Drive all that way, use a full tank of gas, and you've got nothing left at the end of the day, including no gas and no money. Not good. So take that on board, footy. Listen, fingers are still crossed that you'll find something else. We need to crack on. I think we should. We need one of these because I've got something else interesting coming up. So stick around. Right. Not surprisingly, the new 370X excavator rather stole the limelight at last week's JCB product launch, but there were other new things on display too. We're still editing our film of the Raptor, JCB's first foray into the field of tilt rotators, but today we're going to show you how JCB has partnered with Leica to offer excavator operators greater precision. And this is IntelliGrade. Now, I do need to dredge this. Whenever my son makes a video, it is always a huge file, which means I have to keep it on my hard drive. But here we go. You should be seeing it any second now.
Excavator Product Manager. So this machine is, first of all, fitted with the new JCB UX interface, 10-inch touchscreen display that you can set up and customize exactly the way operators want it. But additionally, we've partnered with Leica Geosystems, part of the Hexagon Group, to deliver a machine guidance and control solution. So this can run both a 2D machine guidance, and it can also go into a 3D machine guidance. And by machine control, we have what we call JCB IntelliGrade. So you can pull one single lever and that will hit the grade consistently and accurately. There is a very wide range of customers that could take this, because we're offering it to work in both a 2D world and a 3D world. If you're doing simpler projects where you just want to go down a certain depth or do a simple profile on that, you can do that all through the display, right up to the more advanced use cases where you're on a big infrastructure site and you want to have a 3D model sent straight to the display and then be able to continue to work on that. So a huge number of customers will see benefits from this solution. So generally the Leica part runs in this display, which is in the cradle, and this can be removed. But the semi-auto functionality, the bit that we call JCB IntelliGrade, you can customize one of the buttons on the joystick through the UX interface, and that enables you to toggle that semi-auto mode on and off. So you'll be able to see in this tablet, most of the information that's provided is just in terms of numbers, and this will give you information relative to the grade where you're at. So it is very, very easy to use it. We also include in the cab a QR code that could be scanned, and that gives some very easy how-to videos explaining all the functionality around this. And we also have how-to videos for the JCB UX display as well. We try and make it as simple and easy for operators to use all the systems that we have. So we've initially launched it on the 220X, the new 370X that we showed you yesterday. That will be available with this new option very, very shortly. And the entire rest of the X series range, when we do the new display updates, which will be later on in this year, we will have the Leica solution offered in those as well with the IntelliGrade. We've worked for a long time with Leica. The technology they have is excellent, very high levels of precision, but we also find that they have an incredible support network that's able to work really closely with our dealer network. And of course, for our customers, having the maximum uptime is incredibly important, and that's one of the reasons why we felt that Leica was the best partner for us.
I'll come back to that in just a moment, because there's something I wanted to point out, or just something I wanted to address. There is a guy called Alberto Veloz, watching from New York City, who has just followed us over on Instagram. Morning, Alberto. Thank you very much indeed for being here. How is New York today? Gorgeous, I would imagine, because he always is. Now, couple of things. If you're watching that video very closely, you may have spotted that there was a QR code popped up on the screen. Obviously, most of you are probably watching on mobile devices, so you had no chance to scan that. But if you decide to go and watch this back on a computer or another display and you scan that QR code, it is actually a functional QR code. Bearing in mind that my son Fred put it in there, where does the QR code lead you? It leads you to his Diggers and Dozers Instagram channel. Yeah, it really does. Now, going back to the cost of travel or the perils of travel, Dan Collins just said, Graham, I'm still up at 3:43 a.m. random time, even though 10 minutes from the place of work. Ken Hatcher is in agreement with what I said. Traveling, very expensive now. 50 miles round trip, that's my lot in my own car. He also says, I'm lucky at the moment, only doing 18 miles a day. But you're bearing in mind, he's in Wales, and Wales, the speed limit is about 20 miles an hour. So that's about 50 minutes to do No, but I'm sure that's not the case. Gary Muirhead talking about traveling costs. I remember Joe Biden saying that an electric vehicle can travel state to state on a full tank of gas. What a muppet. Yeah. Still the better of the two options, I think, but yeah, a muppet. Nice kit, says Dan Cohen. Now, I thought a few people would actually say that. Why don't they put the lot on one big screen? Yeah, totally agree. And, like a screen, UX screen, why not combine the two? And maybe that will come in the fullness of time. Jim Turner says, Jesus, there'll be a lot of operators that can't trim up in the future without all the gizmos. If this becomes commonplace, does that matter? Does that matter? I guess, we did touch on it yesterday. If you're in an area where you can't get a signal, then obviously that will matter. But, we have an entire generation of car drivers that can't find their way around their own hometown without turning on the sat-nav. Is that a bad thing? Not sure it is. Mick Norton says, Leica solution looks good, but as we've discussed previously, not the bee's knees for the operator if you're totally dyslexic. JCB Leica text to voice is needed. You will notice that James actually mentioned in that video, because I asked him about that very thing. And to scan a QR code, and it's not the complete solution, I grant you, but if you want to scan that QR code, you literally can call up a video that will tell you, how to do the various operations as well. As I say, not the perfect option. And again, we'll go back to connectivity. QR codes and YouTube videos are fine and dandy if you've got an internet connection. And I realize that's not always the case. But it's clear that JCB are aware. They've taken a step. Maybe there's another step coming down the line. Mick has just said, all getting too much for me. I know what you're saying. iPad could run all of that on one unit screen with a load of apps. Yes, it could. It could. And I'm really quite surprised that, there can't be any money in monitors as such. You'd have thought that they would put maybe it would be easier, just put a mount in the machine and you just drop in an iPad or I can't remember what the app is. It an Amazon Fire? Is it an Amazon Fire it's called? I can't remember. Or whatever the Android equivalent is. Just drop it in, stick a thing up its pipe, and just download the apps that you need, all in one place, all on one screen, and hopefully text to voice as well. Chris Ford says, as for traveling to work, I'm going about 500 yards more than Mark has done today. My commute, I can tell you, my commute is 13 stairs and about 5 steps, and then I'm here. So if ever I'm late, I have literally no excuse whatsoever. Just going back, my script here says this, and I'm going to say this anyway. I realise we are a divided camp on all things GPS and driver aids, but what do you make of the JCB system? I think they've chosen a good partner in Leica to work with, but let me have your thoughts. Jim Turner says it does matter if someone gets the start and then the machine drops on site without all the one lever control, and he can't do it, especially if they are on the books and can't be sacked easily. It's a good point. It is a good point. Mick says, Mark, you just said, does it matter? Think of this as say us older ones were asked back to work due to a skill shortage, we would have to go back to school. It's just taking too much out of the driver's mind and natural learning. Mick, we largely see eye to eye, but there's a point there that you've made that I would play that in the other way. Takes it out of the driver's mind, and I know exactly what you're saying, and I realise what you're inferring there is that. Let me just try and get this absolutely straight, because my view is kind of the opposite of this. What you're saying is it's making life too easy, and therefore the operators aren't thinking about that. They've handed it over to technology. My take on that is the opposite. If you've got a system that will basically set your levels and dig to depth and everything else, the operator could then surely be more mindful of what's going on around him or her. They can be more safety focused because the machine is taking care of heights and levels and things like that. It'd be interesting to get your take on that. Mick Norton says, working to find tolerances with 360 doses, etc., without machine cab technological paraphernalia is still a must in this day and age, and a massive skill fade in the day and age of a massive skill fade for operators. Again, I mean, I think we are. Let's not think we are. We are headed for, a generation or two's time. We'll wonder how or why we ever bothered with pointy sticks and bits of string. We are headed down that way, and I realise there's a transition point between experienced operators who don't need that. But again, I know Steve Williamson, or I haven't spotted him in the chat today so far, but he always says that same thing, work smarter, not harder. If you can make your life easier, why would you not? And again, when you're talking about the system that's currently available on the 370X and the 220X, although it will be rolled out across the rest of the JCB X series range, if you've got a client that is asking for complete precision, data feedback, constant logging of your performance against plan and everything else, what choice do you have? Go with the flow. Elite Demolition and Excavation just joined us over on Instagram, and so has Titans Demo, which I think is a demolition company as well. Welcome to you both. We could talk about our technology for hours and hours, I think, but we do have more to be getting on with. So let me do this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Michael Williams has just joined us over on Instagram. Good morning, he says, and good morning back to you, Mr. Williams. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Now, things are about to get very wheel-loadery. That's not a word. In just a few minutes, I'm going to be showing you Volvo's latest offering in the rehandling sector. But first, we're going to call in on Case to find out more about their latest wheel loader product, which looks a lot like this.
The FPT NEF 6.7-liter engine with inline 6-cylinder, supercharged with the latest generation of common rail electronic injection, develops a maximum power of 172 HP, compliant with the European Stage 5 regulation with integrated high ESCR2 after-treatment system, designed for machine life duration. The transmission is the well-proven ZF Ergo Power 4-speed forward and 3-speed reverse, or 5-speed forward and 3-speed reverse with a torque converter lockup and intelligent clutch cutoff.
Just had a message from Peter McKenna over on our WhatsApp group. And Peter, I am in 100% in agreement with you. I saw, we were talking yesterday about the bridge collapse in Baltimore yesterday, and there was at the time, I was not particularly aware because I'd been busy, but obviously lots and lots to talk about it. And literally, I came off the show yesterday and decided to go and have a look. And within seconds, somebody in America was claiming that it was an inside job and it was a controlled explosion. They do love a controlled explosion conspiracy theory in the States, don't they? Anything falls down, the government did it with high explosives. Now, Mick has just said, Whispers have it in the local. Squib may be making a return. Seems to very, very quietly, if what I hear is correct. As far as I know, they're already back. There was another company, the name of which has completely escaped me. There was another company within the Squib family, basically, and as far as I know, they are actually back up and running within days. Somebody, and I'm not going to try, AGT Krishnatama says made in India, and he did that while we were watching the case thing. I don't know if that's the case, but thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thanks for your comment. Not have had anything to do with GPS. Could you get information overload? Yes, possibly, but I mean, when you really think about it, particularly with when you're sort of working to plan, if you've got a system that sends down the pipes, your plan for the day, there's your levels and everything else, and you basically have to dig to those. All you need to do is make sure that your machine is set at the beginning of the day, and you just carry on as you would normally. The machine will assist in making sure that you're making grade and your precision is correct. Shouldn't be more information overload, but maybe. What we got, Jim Turner says it's all good tech and makes work faster and more efficient, but like Mick says, it will mean as an industry we will lose a lot of skills through the generations. It's a bit sad to think of all that skill will eventually die out. Okay, here's a thought, and this has just occurred to me purely because of what Jim has just said. Imagine, if you will, you get on an airplane. God, that sounded American. I do apologize. You get on an aeroplane. There's an O in it when you're British. You get on an aeroplane and you're heading off to Torremolinos for your annual, or in Gary Muirhead's case, you're heading off to Tenerife. Would you rather the pilot be highly experienced and be sat there with a map, a paper map on his lap, or would you prefer him to be following electronic beacons and radar systems and GPS guidance that basically allows him to concentrate entirely on making sure that you arrive safely while the plane takes care of the rest? Or, put it in another way, I'm in transport mode here, you jump on your cruise liner at Southampton and you are headed for Barbados. And again, your captain is sat there with a paper map on his lap. He's allowing for wind speed and the tides and everything else. But his calculations are just a bit off. So rather than hitting Barbados, you hit Canada instead. I don't know whether that's possible or not. Same thing. Why would you not? Why would you not? And yes, listen, I hate the idea of us losing skills. I wish you could still watch somebody thatching a roof from time to time because I find it absolutely fascinating. I like people that can strip things apart and put them back together better. I love all of that stuff. I love watching people restore cars, restore machines. But you're there in a work environment. Why would you not make it as easy and as efficient as you possibly could? Mick says, Jim Turner makes a good point. We all advocate mentoring, but what a conflict of skills. It will start in who is right, the mentor or the computer. The chances are, if push came to shove, the chances are the computer is more accurate. It might not be better. It might not be more right, but it will certainly be more accurate than the mentor. I'd like him to have all the tech, but know how to do everything manually when the tech fucks up. Good point. I'm not even going to say touche. I'm not even going to say 15 all. I think you may have just conquered me there, Jim. Good point. Well played. Mick Norton says, I'm of the generation that worked through rope-operated dozers, excavators and scrapers to the magic of hydraulics, and I admit I was initially pessimistic, but was converted soon enough. If I was back in the seat now, I would seek some reverse mentoring and get a young lad to show me the new technology. Thank you. That's kind of where I am. That's kind of where I am. And bearing in mind, this is like our discussions about future fuel. This is not, we're not going to wake up on Monday morning, mainly because it's a bank holiday, but we're not going to wake up on Monday morning and have somebody mandate that henceforth we must all use GPS and sat nav and driver aids and all of that in our cabs. There'll be some applications that adopt it very early. There'll be some that adopt it later. It's going to be a gradual thing. And a lot of the objections to these things is based on experience and longevity in the industry and veterans of the industry. But those veterans of the industry, and I count many of you among those, by the time the full change comes, chances are you'll have hung up your hard hats anyway. You know, we're at the very early stages. You know, when you think JCB, huge global company, you know, billions of pounds, and they've just made a proper foray into the field of GPS, and they've done it in partnership with Leica. That's a thing that's going to evolve and evolve and evolve, and the operators that are working with those, and the engineers sat back in the head office, that will evolve as well. This is very early days. Yeah, I think that probably wraps up all of that. I think I've covered all of those. So it is time for some Parisian music. As is so often the case, the conversation continues. This is Jim talking to our friend Mick. You sound like you learnt your craft at the same time as my old fella on string blades and ex-World War II machines. Did sound a great time to be entering the industry. I'm sure it was. But having written, you know, at the time it was 75 years or 70 years history of the NFDC back in the day. It was a great time. But let's forget, this was a time when accidents, including fatal accidents, happened a lot. You know, we're down to between demolition and construction, we're down to still 40 too many, but we're down to about 40 fatalities a year. They were commonplace back in the day. One of the entries that I found in the old NFDC archives was instructions on how to make a toilet, an on-site toilet, which was basically a hole in the ground with a plank of wood. Or a couple of planks of wood. It not great, really not great. Now I understand the nostalgia for, you know, rope machines and everything else, but think today. You know, our mystery machine today was that case 3 CX300E. There will come a time when people will reminisce. Ah, yes. Do you remember the 300E? That was a machine. Yes. None of this fancy schmancy hover tracks that they have now. There will be a generation of people that will look back at the CX300E, the 370X from JCB as the good old days. They really will. Mick says maybe, but a computer only gives out what is fed into it. Think how many mistakes programmers have made. Yes, I know all about AI and how many planes have gone down due to computer muck-ups. As many mistakes as people has, and I realize it's early days, and I realize that, you know, there is an imbalance in numbers, but has a computer ever told a machine to slew and whacked somebody in the head? Has a machine ever driven a skid steer loader off the roof of a building? Has a computer ever reversed a dump truck over somebody? Not as far as I know. Digger David Hearn just joined us over on Instagram. Morning, David. Mr. Hearn, how are you doing? Guys, there's nothing over here. I've got to travel, unfortunately. It is what it is. It's going to cost me £160 in fuel for a week. I've got to do it if that's the only way I can make £500 for a week. I don't want to do it, but I've got to do it. Yes, unfortunately, that is precisely the case. If I had a demolition ticket, there's work around here, but on the other side, I've got to travel for public work to keep in the industry. Wish there was something I could do, my friend. Wish I could wave a magic wand, but yeah. There's a bloody great black. Let me try that with my teeth in. There's a bloody great black cloud coming over the hill, going to deluge in Warwickshire, and the ground will be shit when it's wet. Well, break out the brolly and prepare. Go build an ark. Years ago, a good driver knew how to cut and fill, grade and slope, level and dig. All he needed was a couple of bits of wood and a gopher. Yeah. Take a step back. And listen, I'm not on the payroll of technology companies. I promise you, I'm really not. But take a step back. If you owned a construction company or groundworks company, do you want an operator and a gopher, as you describe him, and his little bits of sticks? Or do you want to employ just one man, the operator, do away with the gopher, so you've made a saving there, and entrust your livelihood, which is what we're talking about, to technology? I think it's also worth bearing in mind that a lot of this technology is not. Please bear in mind, how long has GPS and machine driver aids been around and available? It's taken this long for JCB to put their foot in the market. This is not JCB pushing that tech. This is the pull from the market, or parts of the market, the house builders and the road makers and the railway companies. They are saying, we want optimum accuracy, and we also want to be able to chart every single pass of a bucket or a compactor. We want maximum data. As I say, not JCB. Am I in agreement? Listen, guys, I'm with you. Would I rather stand and watch an experienced operator making that machine dance, or do I want to watch an autonomous machine where a computer's doing it? Of course, watch the operator. It's like, would I rather watch a proper football match, or would I rather watch a computer simulation? Of course, I'd rather watch a proper football match. But if you are in the market, if you're a house builder, you are not just responsible for building those houses and giving them their whatever the house building guarantee is called these days, but if you are then responsible for the structure of those houses and the foundations and everything else for the next 20, 30 years, you want to be able to have some data that says, here's a computer printout, here's everything we did. We followed that by the letter of the law, and therefore anything that's happened subsequently is not our issue. That's what we're talking about. Mick says, I think it's time you start a new show for us dinosaurs. At least we will all agree. Well, I hope so. We'd find something else to disagree about. Listen, I don't have enough time to start another show. This one, do you remember when this show used up 10 minutes of my day and I could go and do something else? Not anymore. Mick says, sorry, mate, just don't like the idea of all this stuff taking over. And I understand that. And listen, it would not be particularly hard to get an AI to replace me. Frankly, it would press all the right buttons. It would be better looking, better spoken. It wouldn't wear silly hats and so on. But, you're stuck with what you've got for the time being. Gary Muirhead says, we have lost a lot of what we used to call a good all-rounder, someone who could drive a digger, dozer, loading shovel. That, to my mind, and I agree with you 100%, Gary, that, to my mind, is not the fault of technology, though. That is the fault of the training companies. A good all-rounder stopped being a good all-rounder the day that he needed a different card for each of those disciplines that you've just described there. I think they've basically pushed that. And the crazy thing with that, much the same as technology, but the crazy thing with that is if you had a good all-rounder, yes, you might have somebody that's slightly better on a dozer, slightly better on a scraper, slightly better on an excavator, but somebody that could lend their hand to everything. What a fantastic benefit that would be. And the training companies have basically outlawed that. They've basically outlawed that. Footy says, technology must go on. That's the way it is in the world. But as dinosaurs, yeah, unfortunately, have to look and carry on, trying to keep up with the modern world. Yeah. Listen, we've had the same conversation in the past. Would you jump behind? Would you go and order a car now? And you go and order yourself a new car and say, I don't want none of your fancy GPS, sat nav, ABS braking, airbags, electric windows, Bluetooth connectivity. I want all of that taken out. Or are you going to say, well, that'll make life a bit easier? Just saying. Mick says, will the missus be happier? Now that's an answer. I love to hear from her. Okay. I'm with Mick on this. I'm not big in technology. Your Weaver Demolition, good morning, over on Instagram. Listen, please rest assured that I'm with you guys. I can't work the Leica system. I can barely drive an excavator. I can't do any of these things, so I'm very much with you as well. But I would very quickly remind you that you are currently watching a live stream that is sent out in 4K quality over the internet so that you could watch it quite possibly on a mobile device. I realize some of you still take magazines, Earth Movers, Awesome Earth Movers magazine, whatever it might be, but you can't talk to them. You can't actively interact with those magazines. You can actively interact with this. And this, in my sphere of media, this is representative of the takeover of technology. To my mind, I said this to somebody a couple of days ago. Would I go back to magazines? Never, ever would I do that, because I turn up every day and we have these conversations. I've got enormous respect for Awesome Earth Movers as a magazine. I've got respect for the Earth Movers magazine and for all the other magazines that are out there, but none of them have this. None of them allow you to do this, and I don't allow you to do this. Technology allows you to do this. Dan Cullen says, yeah, with Gary, Card's destroyed the knowledgeable guy, as now it's card this, card that. It is, yeah. Martin, the Norwegian Earth Mover, just joined us over on Instagram. Mick Norton says, 10 years ago, I had to test 2 operators on a Cat D5 dozer, where part of the test was construct a slot without GPS. For their entire time with the company, they had never had operated the operator without GPS assistance, and I had to retrain them. Okay. Mick says, it's an age thing, Dan. It is, I think. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for progress. I can remember when pipe lasers first came in, they were brilliant, followed by rotating lasers. They made life a lot easier. Never had anything to do with GPS, but we're losing a skill set by using and relying on this technology. I'm largely with Gary on this. The point he's making here is technology should always be taken as a help, not a replacement. And I think that's where I diverge from technology. I think if you've got stuff like GPS that makes the operator more productive, more accurate, more precise, I'm with that. If you've got technology like remote control, which means that you can operate a machine at a distance in a hazardous environment, so you're taking the man out of harm's way and it's only the machine that might potentially get damaged, I'm all for that. Where you get to the point where technology might threaten somebody's job, that's where I go left and the industry goes right, just to be clear. I think we've still got something else to show you, and I'm sure I've already done the thing. Yes, I have. Yeah, we did the Parisian music. I didn't show you what I was going to show you, did I? So pretend that the Parisian music just played because it's Intermat time. Intermat is closing in fast. By the time we get Easter out of the way, it'll be roughly 3 weeks until I go and live in France for a week. So as a precursor to all of that, let's take a look at another new product from one of Intermat's key exhibitors, the mighty Volvo. Oh, we like that. We do like that. I'm not doing a hot or not on that, but I'd vote hot if we were. Mick Norton just said, with the increase in clap, I've improved the audio, but I can still not speak English. With the increase in cab clutter, there's always a great increase in the foreseeability of risky and safety critical areas. Chris Ford says, I know I'm watching a live stream on a mobile device, but it's not without its problems. And I have to have a good signal for it to work. I can still go to an old toolbox and find a 2p that I carried to make a phone call from a phone box. Remember them? Yes, I do remember them. You have to remember, I am of that age. I do remember literally having to, overseas exhibitions, for example, if there was a major announcement. And I do remember doing it one year. I think it was an Intermat, and a bunch of people picketed one of the stands. I think it was a Caterpillar stand. There was a strike going on at a French Caterpillar factory, if memory serves me correctly. And a lot of the workers turned up at Intermat and picketed the stand. And I had to get that news back to my office in the UK. And it was literally a case of get to the nearest payphone and fill it full of francs. Back in the day. Dan Cullen says, nice shovel. I agree. Mick says, can't remember the name of the film. It was about putting John Glenn in space. There was a girl done all the calculations on a blackboard, better than IBM they had. Even John Glenn trusted her more than the computer. Just saying. Yeah, I remember that. I do remember that. And I can't remember what the movie was called. But it's a good point. It is a good point. I think we've probably done with the main part of the show. I'm going to carry on afterwards anyway, so no need to worry about all of that. I want to roll the outro because that's what I do around about this time of the day, an hour in. As I said, going to roll the outro just a second before leaping gazelle-like. See, technology can't do that. Those robot dogs that you see, they can't be leaping gazelle-like, but I can. Ish. I'm going to leap over and see what's going on in the chat, although I've already done most of it. If you can't stick around, please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues, and your computers. I hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, please stick around because I will be back with the Craic after this. Hear that? Music. And I can hear it too today. We're back on course, people. We're back on course. Good morning to you, one and all. Let's go over to the chat. I'm going to go back to the very beginning. I'm just going to very quickly remind you, if you haven't answered already, what the question of the day today was, what fictional family would you most like to join? I opted for The Sopranos. I know we've already had some answers in, but I'm going to get back to that in just a moment. Rattle through. Dan Cullen, even earlier than he usually is. He was here at 9:56 this morning. 9:57 yesterday, 9:56. Do me a favour, Dan. Don't come on at 3:43 in the morning when you wake up and expect an answer, because I can promise you, you won't get one. There is Dan officially arriving. That was after the show started. Jim Turner's here as well. Morning, Jim. Morning to Gary Muirhead. Morning to Ken Hatcher. Good morning to my wife, who apparently is among the lurkers. Yes, the lurkers who sit there, watch this show every day. I know who some of you are. Word gets back. Morning, Worthing. Morning, Hemel Hempstead. Morning. Ah, dear. So easily amused. Good morning, Chris Ford. Happy hump day. Happy hump day. Quite right. And see, if I were a normal person, which quite clearly and demonstrably I am not, I would only have one more show to do. But by popular demand, I am going to broadcast on Friday. It's Good Friday. Whether it'll be a good show, frankly, remains to be seen. But I will be here on Friday. But yes, happy hump day. Thank you very much indeed for that, Chris. There is my good lady, who really, you know, I listen. I appreciate her presence. Her engagement drives up the engagement on the entire show. But I can't help thinking she'd be much better off making bacon sandwiches around about now. Just saying. All good here. Mark says, Jim Turner wading through shite. Yes. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Same shit, different day. Yeah, I'm always in it. The only thing that varies is the depth, as somebody once said. Mick Norton is here as well. Yeah, more bass in my voice. I learned something yesterday as well, which I'm not very good at doing. Apparently, you see that, you know, that sign of it's a surfer thing, I think. That apparently is how you're supposed to work this mic. My head moves far too much to do that. I just end up where I am. But yes, I have. There is an equalizer. For those of you that are into audio, and I'm not, there is an equalizer available for this microphone, and it was on. Oh, it was on the system, but it wasn't switched on. So I played around yesterday to make sure I've got all my settings right. But I also added. I didn't add bass actually. I allowed the bass to come through. If that makes any sense at all. Chris Ford says the volume is much better today. Might have something to do with cleaning the phone speaker. First time it's been out of its protective cover in 2 years. I can only imagine. I did write. I started the show today with a list of the contradictions in this industry. But I wrote a piece. This was a couple of weeks ago. It's just been sat there waiting to be published. About the fact that demolition and construction is sometimes a hard industry to love. I won't bore you with the details, but I can tell you the intro actually says it's why is it so hard to advocate? Why it is hard to advocate for an industry when sometimes the positive only just outweighs the negative. That sounds like something you'd like to get behind. The link's in the chat. The link is also on our WhatsApp group. Go take a look. Love to hear what you think. And yes, I am. I may even add that to the intro forthwith. Welcome. I am the walrus of demolition. Can you imagine somebody joining this show in a couple of weeks' time when I introduce myself as the walrus of demolition? They'll think they've gone completely mad, or that I have, or possibly a combination thereof. Our question of the day, as I reminded you, was what fictional family would you most like to join? I do very much align myself with Homer Simpson. That was my first choice. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought The Sopranos, mainly for the food, if I'm honest. There's a lot of food in, a lot of good Italian food in The Sopranos. Anybody seen The Sopranos? Fantastic series. Chris Ford has burst his banks, apparently. He's got a well in the yard and it's coming out the top. Andy Hare. Good morning, Andy Hare. Purveyor of some of the finest attachments. And the purple, which, as we all know now, is my favourite colour. Andy Hare over at Northern Track says, the Addams Family looks like fun. There is just one issue I have with the Addams Family. I would probably need to be the father. What is his name? I can't remember. I'd need to be him, because in every iteration of the Addams Family, I've always found Morticia to be quite hot. I don't know why that is. The original Addams Family TV series, the black and white one, found her quite hot, and I also find her quite hot as Angelica Houston, and I'm sure there's been other iterations since. kind of like that. There's my wife fixing her crown because apparently she has been anointed. She's been anointed as the Demolition Queen. Good Lord. Jim Turner, nothing wrong with being a walrus, Mark. They live a long time. They're always long in the... Yeah. Thanks for that. Mark Whiting joined us as well. Bit 8 minutes late. Black mark against Mark on the register, but don't worry, you're forgiven already. Morning, Mark. Hope you're fitting well, my friend. Loads and loads of guesses on our mystery machine, but I think it was Jonathan Duras that finally got it right. Going back to our question of the day. Question of the day. Dan Cullen is also going with the Addams family. Mick Norton, there's a blast from the past. Aussie series, The Sullivans. The only time I ever saw The Sullivans, and it wasn't out of choice, I can assure you, was if I was off sick from school. Mid-afternoon, The Sullivans used to come on. Kind of, if you're too young, or you actually went to school and you never got to see The Sullivans, imagine Emmerdale in the outback. Kind of. That was The Sullivans. So yeah, that's what we've got from there. Now, Chris Ford, I can get on board with this. Question of the day: what fictitious family would you like to be part of? The Tracy family from Thunderbirds. Boy, did they have some toys to play with. Yes, they did. They did. This has always been a fascination of mine. I loved Thunderbirds as a kid. Loved Joe 90, Captain Scarlet. Thunderbirds was a real favourite. Two things, and to be perfectly honest, one of these holds true to this day. I'll do the first one, and then I'll tell you about the one that holds true, right? So, there was a character in Thunderbirds called Virgil Tracy. If I remember rightly, he flew, the fat green Thunderbirds. I think it was Thunderbirds 3. He flew that. And now, I realised he was a puppet, but apparently he had... Sorry, the more I think about this, the funnier I find it. He had 2 sets of eyebrows, both of them bushy, but when things were going normally and he was just chatting to his family, his eyebrows were like this. And as soon as the music went, which meant things were getting intense and exciting, his eyebrows went like that. That's one memory of Thunderbirds, but the other one, and this is the one that absolutely rings true to this day, right where we are in all walks of life. At some point in many episodes of Thunderbirds, somebody would utter the words, "Don't worry, it's as safe as crossing the road." Roughly 12 seconds before all hell broke loose. Yes. Don't worry, it's as safe as crossing the road. If anybody ever says that to you, run away. Things are about to fall down or blow up or both. Is NC Dumpers still manufactured in Ireland? I don't know. My wife's answer, yes, because she's greedy and corrupt and nasty. Sorry. Her answer to the question of the day, the Roy family from Succession. Yes, the Roy family. Anybody else watch Succession? Fantastic series. A completely unlikable family, but absolutely fascinating to watch. If anybody got to see that? Again, lots and lots of answers on our mystery machine, but there is the correct answer from our friend Jonathan Duras, who correctly identified the case CX300E. Yes, it most certainly was. Gary, so close. 300D. 300D. Yes, if you'd have looked closer at the ashtray, wing mirror, I don't know, you may have spotted the fact that it had switched from a D to an E. Yeah. Chris Ford says, I didn't spot this the first time around. So, dumpers tend to be mistreated, left out in the wet and shit. Can't see an electric dumper having a long life. Ice cold, he says. Ice cold. I will do a count up after the show to decide whether the HD machines actually go forward into our grand final. I feel like I'm overselling the grand final. It's just going to be an evening show where we go back over a year of machines. And I was thinking about that, actually. I don't think it's fair to try and judge that on the night. So what I may well do is to do a show in advance, and we'll come up with some sort of scoring system. And a week later, we will do the grand result. I'm figuring it out in my head. I go live at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm not at my best at 10 in the morning. This would be ideal for interchangeable battery packs, says Gary Muirhead. That was talking about the Avant Techno. Dan Cullen, quite clearly a madman or an insomniac or a combination thereof. Graham, I'm still up at 3:43 a.m. even though 10 minutes from place of work. My wife has an alarm set for, well, for most mornings actually, 7:24. 7:24. Why? Why not 7:15 or 7:30? Why random numbers? 3:43. Lunacy. Ken Hatcher says traveling very expensive now. 50-mile round trip. That's my lot in my own car. Yeah, listen. I've not got out the habit of putting sort of 20 and 30 quid's worth of diesel in my wife's car, but obviously 20 and 30 quid goes virtually nowhere these days. So yes, I'm very, very aware of the cost of fuel, and I do, as a result of that, I do seem to be filling the car up on a much more regular basis. Ken Hatcher says he's lucky at the moment he's only doing 18 miles a day. I can't say I'm envious because I do way, way less than that. I don't do 18 miles in a week generally, but there you are. Jim Turner started what turned out to be the conversation point of the day. Jesus, there'll be a lot of operators that can't trim up in the future without all the gizmos. If this becomes commonplace, that was talking about the JCB IntelliGrade that they've done in partnership with Leica, if you're joining us a bit late in the show. Mick Norton says, Leica solution looks good, but as we've discussed previously, not the bee's knees for the operator. If you're totally dyslexic, JCB Leica text to voice is needed. I raised it, did the guided tour there. I also raised it with Tim Burnhope, who is one of the innovation heads at JCB. We shall see. We shall see. I'm still digging to try and get a really firm handle on the levels of literacy within the industry. I found documentary evidence that the literacy level within construction is lower than the national average, but I haven't yet managed to put my finger on a piece of information that says it is this much lower than the national average, because that will obviously skew the way that I write about it and report on it ultimately. But I am still searching, so watch this space. Our friend Mick says, all getting too much for me. And I'm sure there's a lot of operators saying exactly the same. But, if you've got a young upstart, like a Steve Williamson, who is very, very good, not just on the levers, but on the buttons and the dials as well. As somebody described it a little bit later, do a bit of reverse mentoring, get the young upstart to show you the ropes. And yes, I am in complete agreement with that. An iPad could run all of that on one unit with a load of apps. Yeah. And bearing in mind that I don't know if this is peculiar to me. When I've had new iPhones, iPads, new MacBooks, new desktops, I tend to go through two things. I add lots of apps, and then about 6 months later, I realise I'm not using 3/4 of them, so I get rid of them. But imagine the ability to be able to upgrade your system by the addition of an app. And I can't... for example, I somebody mentioned it. I think it was Dan Cullen mentioned it. So just as a small aside, imagine you've switched over to an iPad system. So you've got your JCB UX or the Komatsu or Caterpillar or Hitachi equivalent. You've got that on there, but you've also got your GPS system, be it from Topcon, Leica, whoever. You've got all of that plumbed in there as well. But it is now February, and you're on a bit of a muck shift, and you just add the weather app to it. So when you switch on your machine in the morning, it gives you a weather report, so that you know that you've got a window of opportunity before the rain arrives, for example. The ability to update that system as you go along with things that are possibly just universally useful, like a weather app, for example, but also more specifically useful for a particular application. And I can't think what that might be. But I know we spoke with Bobcat quite some time ago, and one of the things that they were talking about was the idea of being able to unlock certain functions Imagine just, you've got your Bobcat skid steer and you've got your basic functions so you can control the machine and everything else, but you find yourself in a particularly hard application and you want the additional power. You just download the app, you press the button, you've got the additional power. And when you're done with it, you switch it off and you take it off your iPad or your display and you don't have it anymore. Just to be able to pick and choose. I am designing the future as we speak. Chris Ford says, as for travelling to work, I'm going about 500 yards more than Mark has done today. About 500 yards. As I said, we did open a can of worms when we started talking about technology. It does matter if someone gets the start. The machine drops on site without all the one lever control, and he can't do it, especially if they're on the books and can't be sacked easily. All good points. Lots of people saying exactly the same things. Mick Norton says, working to find tolerances with 360s, dozers, etc., without machine cab technological paraphernalia is still a must in this day and age of massive skill fade for operators. Now, Mick, you know this subject way better than I do. I mentioned a bit later on, and we'll come to that in just a moment. I mentioned it earlier, this notion of cards doing away, the card schemes doing away with that good all-rounder, as Gary Muirhead described it. Has that also contributed to that skill fade? Joe Brown Construction Company, good morning to you, over on Instagram. You would, in the past, and I'm sure they still exist. I mean, Nigel Williams would be an example of that, where you had an operator that could turn his hand to pretty much anything. Maybe they were better at certain things, but they could turn their hand to anything. So if push came to shove and you needed the excavator operator to jump on the dozer, he could do that, or she could do that. When the powers that be decided that you needed a card for this and a card for that and a card for a dozer and a card for an excavator and a card for an attachment and a card for a dump, you know what the score is. When that happened, did that contribute to the skills fade that you described there? Because rather than having a good all-round knowledge, you're now doing just that bit there. Is that part of it? Never thought of that before until that came up. Mick Norton says, I'm of the generation that worked through rope-operated dozers, excavators and scrapers to the magic of hydraulics. And I admit I was initially pessimistic, but was converted soon enough. If I was back in the seat now, I would seek some reverse mentoring, which is what I mentioned, get a young lad to show me this new technology. Yeah, they're there. They know this stuff. And that is the point. A lot of you guys have grown up doing things in a specific way, very manual, very hands-on, very self-sufficient. That's your way. You've got another generation that are coming up very close behind you, Steve Williamson being indicative of that, they are quite happy to relinquish some of that responsibility and let technology take over. There is a meeting there. It's not one or the other. And in the right application, maybe one is right. In another application, maybe the other is right. But it's not a never the twain shall meet. It should be an interflow, I would say. That's a lot of HP source. Wish I knew that was related to. Whispers in the local that Squib are making a return. Seems to be very quietly, if what I hear is correct. Yet there was, as I say, another company lurking in the background. I wish I could remember what they were called. If I think about it long and hard enough, I'm sure I could. But yes, there was another company lurking in the background, and I'm fairly sure it was run by, I think it was a sister of one of the Squib, or a sister of the Squib family, and it sort of kind of lurked in the background. But my understanding is maybe it's gone. I don't know that for sure. That might not be the case, but that was certainly the way I heard it. Chris Ford says, not have had anything to do with GPS. Could you get information overload? I think it really is one of those things that cuts both ways. As I said previously, I think, I would imagine, particularly if you're very new to it, being constantly bombarded with new information and an endless, those systems, there are endless tabs and endless rabbit holes of data and technology for you to pursue if you're that way inclined. But the flip side of that, I think, is if that is taking care of things like the grade, you can then worry about other things like not backing your machine over somebody or not clouting them with your bucket. Swings and roundabouts. Jim Turner says it's all good tech, makes you work faster and more efficient, but like Mick says, it will mean as an industry we'll lose a lot of our skills through the generations. Bit sad to think of all that skill will eventually die out, but it will be replaced. It will be replaced. I would liken it to the job that I do. You know, when I first started as a journalist back with my manual typewriter, I would write an article. Somebody would take that piece of paper. I would literally type it on a piece of paper. They would take that piece of paper and they would send it to a typesetter. And a typesetter would take my words and take thousands of individual bits of metal, hot metal, that's what it was called, and they would arrange them backwards on a page, on a master, if you like, and that would be inked. And that ink would be transferred to the page to produce the magazine. To produce a magazine now, I can type some words on a computer, press a button, and it's printed. You know, do I lament the loss of typesetters? Yes, I do, because they were a fantastic bunch, highly skilled, fantastic. But would I want to go back to that? No. I mean, I wouldn't want to go back to magazines anyway, but I certainly wouldn't want to go back to doing it that way because it was slow and cumbersome and mistakes were made. Now, if there's a mistake made, it's down to this guy, not a typesetter being half asleep. Gary Muirhead says, never found travelling to and from site an issue, just something I've always done, like I've always said. Have wife, must travel. I wish I'd spotted that earlier. I may have that printed up, hand that to my wife, actually. Mick says, Jim Turner makes a good point. We all advocate mentoring, but what a conflict of skills it will start in who is right, the mentor or the computer. In terms of accuracy, the computer. I mean, so long as it's been programmed correctly, the computer will always be right. It just will. You know, computers don't make mistakes. They only make mistakes if you put, what was the expression? Crap in, crap out? If you're feeding them with correct information, you're dandy. Jim Turner says, this was talking about pilots and cruise ship captains. I'd like him to have all the tech, but know how to do everything manually when the tech fucks up. Well, in the immediate aftermath of that crash over in Baltimore, which I'm 99.99999% sure wasn't a controlled explosion, you know, was there a computer failure there? Don't know. It will come out in the fullness of time. We did address all of that. There you are. Going back to my weather app. There's a bloody great black cloud coming over the hill, going to be a deluge in Warwickshire, and yes, going to ruin Dan's day. Weather app. Oh, another thing, you know, and this is, I'm not going to say her name out loud, but I have a smart speaker on my desk, and when I come in here in the morning, I say her name, what's in the diary today, and it's, you know, phone calls that I need to make, you know, various jobs that I need to do, chores I need to run, you know, both personal and business as well. Have that on your computer or on your in-cab device. You know, possibly have on there, you know, once a week you have to, before you can start your machine, you have to sit through a safety briefing or something like that, and you have to tick a box to say that you were paying attention and maybe answer a few questions about it. All of those things are possible, particularly if you can switch it over rather than having a screen for every single part of your job. You could have that all within an app, all within a single monitor with apps. Fantastic idea. Graham Footy Williams says the agent's just come back. Company wants me to on site on Tuesday. Got the job at £20 an hour. Looks like it's 7 to 7. I hope you have got the job. Yeah, and there's Dan Cullen saying exactly the same thing. Wish you luck, Graham. Yeah, absolutely right. Mick Norton says, a modern plant operator will indeed reminisce way back in the day when Leica joined JCB, but it will not have had the joy of an Irish foreman looking over his shoulder, lapsing into the vernacular with timely advice. And again, is that a bad thing? You know what? I realise it's a good grounding, and you know we all talk about, you know, shouty bosses that we had and shouty sweary bosses that we've had over the years. And I don't want to sound overly snowflakey here, but are we not beyond that? Are we not at the point now where we've figured out that maybe shouting and bawling and swearing at people is not actually the best way to get the best out of them? Maybe that's another thing that goes away, that maybe we shouldn't be too nostalgic about. Maybe. Gary Muirhead, I did want to go back to that one. We lost a lot of what we used to call a good all-rounder, someone who could drive a digger, dozer, loading shovel, etc. Yeah, I mean, they are still around, but they are a fewer and further between. And I do genuinely believe that the card systems, the competence card systems, and the need to have a card for everything, which, let's be absolutely honest here, is purely a money-making exercise. I do think that's contributed to it. Incidentally, I was talking to somebody just yesterday from a demolition company, and they were doing a job on a property that they owned themselves. And it was their turn to get the health and safety executive visit, which they did. They passed with flying colours, very good company. But they did, in passing, say to the HSC inspector, these are our operators operating our machines on a building owned by us, on land that is owned by us. Do they need CSCS, CPCS, NOC and NVQs? And the answer was no. If you are competent for those people to work on your site, on your land, on your machines, that's fine. It's not, I hasten to add, it is, none of these things are a legal requirement. We've bought into a system, and I'll go back to the point that I made about the various contradictions in this industry. We've got, within the demolition and construction industry in the UK, we've got 300,000 construction SMEs, so small to medium enterprises. They employ 2.7 million people. That's 95, 96, 97% of all the people that are employed within construction are employed by SMEs. Those SMEs and those people that work within them contribute £117 billion per year to the UK's GDP. And yet they're all told what to do by a little cabal that sits at the top that doesn't employ that many people but tells everybody else what to do. And it is those people that insist on a card for everything, and they will, the drop of a hat and the swoop of a ballpoint, they will decide, that blue card that you qualified for? Yes, we've decided it's going to be green from now on, so you don't qualify anymore. So you'll have to sit an exam, and in order to sit that exam, you'll have to pay us some money. And that card that you had, how it used to last a lifetime? Well, we've decided it's only going to last for 5 years, and in 5 years' time, when we come to renew it, we've decided actually we're going to require you to renew it annually, and it's all going to cost you money. Yeah, we're worried about technology. We should be more worried about the people that run the industry, in my opinion. Let's have a look. There's lots of comments coming through here. I wish I could remember the name of that film, Mick, because I've seen it, but I can't remember what it is. It may come to me. Question of the day, going back to that. I'll come back to Mick in just a second. Question of the day was, what fictional family would you most like to be part of? Gary Muirhead, the Waltons. Ah, yes, it was a simpler time with the Waltons. Good night, John Boy. Yes, good call, I would say. Let's have a look. Yes, Dan Cullen, 4:35 would be better. 4:30 would be even better still. Round numbers. Mick says, can you imagine West Ham versus Millwall played by robots and robots as the crowd? Listen, I've seen the TV show Robot Wars. I know exactly how that would turn out. But it wouldn't be very interesting, would it? Mick says, right, being an old fart, I've just stoked the boiler up on the car, so we'll be off to Asda in a few minutes. Have the hound walking in front with a red flag to warn all the younger generation in the computer-run motors to get out the effing way, as the brake's not too good on my old banger. Well done. And Martin from Norwegian Earth Mover has just said if he could be part of a fictitious family, he is going with the Simpsons. Yes, I agree, Martin. I see you as a Homer as well. Apparently NC are still making trailers, and apparently they are in County Antrim. And there we are, still in Northern Ireland. There is more technology in a mobile phone than in the spacecraft that put man on the moon. All true. Martin from Norwegian Earth Mover just said, best regards, Homer. Yeah, well done. Chris Ford, we used to use the phrase sex and travel, which is a polite way of saying fuck off. Well done, people. Well done. You've kept me entertained once again. You've improved my morning no end. It's an hour and a half. Go and do your things. It is hump day. Only 2 more shows this week, and I won't be here on Monday. Just a very quick reminder, because it is Bank Holiday Monday, and I'm hoping you're all going to take the opportunity to go and put your feet up as well. No, sorry, I thought something just flashed up, but it's gone away again. Everybody, go and have a fantastic day. I will be back tomorrow. There's Mick saying, stay safe, gents. Laters. Yes, laters indeed. Everybody, go and have a good day. Back tomorrow for more of the same. I don't know quite where the conversation is going to lead us to tomorrow. I didn't know where it was going to lead us today, quite frankly. That's just the way this show pans out. And you wouldn't get this from a magazine, would you? And an hour and a half of entertainment daily. How much entertainment do you get out of the latest issue of your chosen magazine? Nowhere near as much, I bet. Maybe you do. I don't know. Everybody, have a fantastic day. I will see you on the morrow with my new bassy voice, but still with the silly hat. Till then, everybody, have a fantastic day. And thanks for all your input. Speak to you soon.